Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. The power dynamics in the Middle East has changed, quietly, imperceptibly, and not in the manner that Benjamin Netanyahu had hoped when he started his Operation Rising Lion. The Iranian ballistic missiles have emerged as a new factor. For the very first time ever, Israeli cities such as Tel Aviv and Haifa have been subjected to the same kind of treatment which the Israeli fighter jets had been inflicting as a matter of routine on the Palestinian cities of Gaza and West Bank, along with Lebanon and Syria. The 12-day war between Iran and Israel ended with a ceasefire after the United States of America got directly involved with Donald Trump's Operation Midnight Hammer. But bear in mind, Donald Trump's position in this war went from demanding an unconditional surrender to asking the Iranians to return to negotiations to eventually thanking the Iranians for giving the Americans due notice before staging a performative attack on the Al Udeid airbase in Qatar. Iran too has suffered some serious damage. Its air defenses have failed to shoot down even a single Israeli fighter jet that kept circling over the Iranian skies. Almost the entire of the Iranian military leadership was assassinated in the Israeli decapitation attacks, and its prized nuclear facilities, even if not obliterated as Donald Trump has been loudly claiming, have suffered some serious damage even by their own admission. For those who think the Iran-Israel war is over, they are in for a rude surprise. This is a war for which the state of Israel and the United States had been plotting for decades, and Iran had been preparing for this onslaught for an equally a long period of time. But this is just round one of what is going to be a protracted conflict. Our next report gets you more details.
I don't think so, but I'm not happy that Israel's going out now. There was one rocket that I guess was fired overboard. It was after the time limit and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. Ridiculous.
How will you respond if you keep firing fire?
I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
Donald Trump was barely able to conceal his frustration. From wanting to be a president of peace, with aspirations of winning the Nobel Peace Prize, Trump has now become yet another American president of war. Operation Midnight Hammer, that used the stealth B-2 bombers, dropped 14 of the heaviest bunker buster bombs that the Americans have in their arsenal. Along with this, 30 submarine-launched Tomahawk missiles were used to strike the Iranian nuclear facilities. When questions were raised about the scale of the damage inflicted, Pete Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, went to great lengths showing test videos of how effective the bunker buster GBU-57s are in piercing even reinforced concrete to get to the targets that are hidden deep underground. But satellite images such as these, taken just days before the US strikes on the Fordo nuclear facility, are the clearest indicator that Iran knew that the American strikes were coming and managed to shift their 408 kilograms of highly enriched uranium and other nuclear enrichment infrastructure such as centrifuges out of Fordo. The American strikes clearly lacked the element of surprise.
Right there. For certain that the uranium was removed from the facility before the B-2 struck.
So I'm not aware of any intelligence that I've reviewed that says things were not where they were supposed to be, moved or otherwise. And Mr. Chairman, a question for you. Have you been pressured to change your assessment or give a more rosy intelligence assessment to us by any political factors, whether it's the president or the secretary? And if you were, would you do that?
Yeah, well, that one's easy. No. No, I have not, and no, I would not. My job as the chairman is to offer a range of options to the president and the National Command Authority to deliver the risks associated with each of those, and then take the orders of the National Command Authority and go execute them. I've never been pressured by the president or the secretary to do anything other than tell them exactly what I'm thinking, and that's exactly what I've done.
Instead of snuffing out the Iranian nuclear program, even according to American assessments, Iran could now be accelerating its enrichment towards a nuclear weapon. Iran's parliament has announced that Tehran will no longer cooperate with the IAEA. The acquisition of nuclear weapons by the Iranians will break the Israeli monopoly and its hegemony over the Middle East. But as the 12-day war, which has ended in an uneasy truce, has shown, the Israeli hegemony, backed by American weapons, has been challenged by Iranian ballistic missiles. The aura of Israeli invincibility and invulnerability lies shattered in the rubble of the buildings of Tel Aviv and Haifa. Israel's air defense system, though highly effective, has shown that it can be pierced. It was able to stop only about 65% of the Iranian ballistic missiles towards the end of the war. The Israeli interceptor batteries of the Arrow air defense systems had run so critically low that even the Americans could not replenish them at the rate they were being consumed. Israel has now admitted that it had tried its best to assassinate the 86-year-old Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, but it failed in finding an opportunity. The ceasefire that exists at the moment exists only in name, because what is playing out behind the scenes at the moment is a hectic replenishment of the arsenals, and only a spark is needed for the region to witness another conflagration. While the world's attention was fixed on the 12-day Iran-Israel war, the fate of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, desperate and scrambling for food and braving the Israeli gunfire, has attracted relatively little attention. A little over a month ago, the Israelis claimed that they had eased their 3-month-long total blockade on humanitarian aid and commercial supplies into the besieged Gaza Strip. But deadly repeated incidents where the Palestinians waiting for food and other humanitarian aid being killed by Israeli gunfire at the aid distribution sites has now become a near daily occurrence. The United Nations has condemned the United States and the Israeli-backed so-called food distribution system through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation as an abomination and a death trap. Our next report gets you more details.
The once picturesque coastal enclave of Gaza now resembles a dust bowl of debris, where more than 56,000 Palestinians, most of them civilians including women and children, have been killed by the Israeli military since October 7, 2023. Nearly all of its 2.3 million people have been displaced at least once in the aid-starved Gaza. Such is the level of starvation that United Nations has described Gaza as the hungriest place on earth, with a limited number of truckloads that are coming in barely a trickle.
Gaza is the hungriest place on earth.
Since late May, when the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, backed by the United States and Israel, began work, at least 549 starving Palestinians have been killed near the 8 sites by Israeli gunfire or shelling while waiting for food. Every day, scores of Palestinians amid ongoing severe food shortages reach the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's aid distribution sites after walking several miles only to return empty-handed. Those lucky enough to procure food, which is more often than not barely enough to feed their family members, narrate horrific tales of risking their lives for few packets of food.
This is not aid. This is terrible in the fact that 30 to 40 people get killed trying to get aid as if it became the bill price to pay every day. You could survive today, but might be your turn tomorrow or someone else's. This is a death trap for us. This is not aid. This is the road to death. I don't want to eat if I'll be shot at. I come every day, gather whatever leftover hummus from the ground and place in a bag. This is not a life. Death is more dignified.
Reportedly, at some of these distribution sites, Israeli tanks have advanced upon starving Palestinians and opened fire with no announcements, though the Israeli Defense Forces have refuted these charges. Tel Aviv continues to insist that the new aid plan will undermine what remains of Hamas control in Gaza. Calling it unethical and unworkable, the United Nations and major aid groups have refused to cooperate with the GHF's new aid system, accusing it of cooperating with Israel's goals in the 20-month-long war against Hamas in a way that violates humanitarian principles. Israel has also stepped up its offensive in Gaza, where more bombs fall daily, claiming dozens of lives. Late on Wednesday, an Israeli airstrike killed at least 9 people at the school housing displaced families in the Sheikh Radwan suburb in Gaza City, while another strike killed 9 people near a tent encampment in Khan Yunis in the south of the enclave.
Innocent people are dying for no reason. These are innocent. My sister, her husband, and her children, they were the ones hit in the classroom. They were sheltering in a school because their home had been destroyed. What have they done? They had dreams. Children wanted to study, to learn. One of her daughters wanted to study medicine. She was top of her school. They killed their dreams. They erased us. All our children are gone. Why? What is the world waiting for to stand with us?
The carnage came as Arab mediators, Egypt and Qatar, backed by the United States, reached out to the warring parties in a bid to hold new ceasefire talks. But according to Hamas sources, no exact time has been set for a new round of talks. As Gaza remains on the brink of famine, the weaponization of food by Israel, in addition to restricting or preventing access to life-sustaining services, has given rise to accusations of war crimes. Meanwhile, hungry, desperate, and frequently displaced Gazans are barely clinging to a life of dignity, while the world watches comfortably now.
At least 25 people were killed and 63 others were wounded in a suicide bomb attack on a church in Damascus on the 22nd of June. According to the Syrian Interior Ministry, a man first opened fire during a packed service on Sunday evening at the Greek Orthodox Church of the Prophet Elias in the Dvelia neighborhood before detonating his explosive vest. Though no group has claimed responsibility for this dastardly attack, the Syrian Interior Ministry has said that the attacker was associated with the so-called Islamic State group. The attack on the church was the first of its kind in Syria since the Islamist-led rebel group overthrew Bashar al-Assad last December, bringing an end to the 13-year-long devastating civil war. Our next report gets you more details.
A heavily damaged altar. Pews covered in broken glass and blood spattered across the walls. Narrated the mayhem and violence perpetrated by a suicide bomber at the Mar Elias Church in the Dweila district of the Syrian capital Damascus on Sunday evening. The diabolical attack was the first inside a church since the civil war erupted in 2011 in the country, where security, especially of minorities, remains one of the greatest challenges being faced by the Islamist-led government. Addressing a press conference the next day, Syrian Interior Ministry spokesman Nuruddin al-Baba said that the preliminary investigation pointed the finger of blame to the extremist Islamic State group.
The Syrian Ministry of Interior condemns the criminal, sinful bombing that targeted the St. Elias Church today, with preliminary indications pointing to it being a suicide attack carried out by the ISIS organization. This is not the first time that the ISIS organization has attempted to target civilians with criminal acts. The Ministry of Interior has previously thwarted 2 attempted bombings, one at the Sayyida Zainab Shrine and another at the Malula Church through complex security operations.
According to some witness testimonies, when a crowd charged at the gunman, shooting indiscriminately at the packed worshippers, including children and the elderly, he detonated his explosives at the entrance of the church, resulting in the deaths of people who were both inside the building and in the immediate vicinity. As security forces and first responders rushed to the church, some of the panicked survivors were heard wailing. Subsequently, Islamic State group hideouts in Damascus and the countryside around the capital were raided, resulting in the death of 2 militants and the arrest of militants, including the leader of the Islamic State cell. On Wednesday, in the northeastern city of Kamashli, people took out a rally holding crosses and portraits of the victims of the St. Elias Church bombing to reaffirm their commitment to a peaceful coexistence.
We came here to denounce the terrorist bombing that took place at St. Elias Church in Dwella district of Damascus and to affirm our commitment to preserving the peaceful coexistence that has defined this region throughout our lives as Muslims, Christians, Kurds, and all the diverse components of the Syrian population. We hope that there will be a serious investigation and prosecution of the people who carried out this bombing.
The Christian community in Syria has shrunk from around 1 million before the war to under 300,000, a consequence of waves of displacement and emigration. Syria's President Ahmed al-Shara has repeatedly promised to protect religious and ethnic minorities since seizing power last December. But 2 waves of deadly sectarian violence in recent months rocked Syria and damaged his portrayal of himself as the protector of minorities. This unprecedented attack targeting a church not only breached the proverbial red line, but has spelled out in no uncertain terms that the work is cut out for the Syrian president.
More than a dozen people have been killed and more than 400 others have been injured in Kenya in protests across the country, marking the 1-year anniversary of the anti-tax demonstrations on the 25th of June. The next day, Kenya's under-fire government condemned the nationwide protests, saying that thousands of businesses were ruined in what it labelled to be terrorism disguised as dissent. The Kenyan President William Ruto, who came to power in 2022 promising rapid economic progress, faces deep resentment, and his high-handedness in dealing with the protests has come in for criticism. Meanwhile, the United Nations, while deploring the violence, has called for calm and restraint. Our next report gets you more details.
Kenya, reputed to be one of the most stable nations in East Africa, was rocked by anti-government demonstrations on Wednesday. Thousands of people across major towns took to the streets to voice anger and frustration. with President William Ruto's government and to demand an end to police brutality. Holding placards, they chanted, "Ruto must go," and waved branches as a symbol of peaceful opposition to his rule. The demonstrations marked the first anniversary of a previous wave of deadly anti-government demonstrations in the capital city of Nairobi on 24th of June last year. On that infamous day, at least 60 people demonstrating tax hikes were killed by security forces when a huge crowd had stormed the Kenyan parliament. This time around, the rallies began peacefully but descended into chaos as the police used water cannons, rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. As young men held running battles with police, unnecessary aggression and brute force was employed by the security forces, which led to the senseless loss of at least 16 lives. According to the Amnesty International, all those who died in the clashes had gunshot wounds. A day after, the inconsolable families mourning those killed demanded accountability from Ruto's government.
Like, I'm just out of words. Like, I don't know. Because I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, you know what I want to say. I want justice for him. Because he was my everything. Kama niacha na mtu yako na 2 months. Na huyo mwingine yako 2 years. Ako na cerebral palsy. Like, I don't know even what I just want justice. Like, justice for that cause. Because I don't know where I will start everything. Like, I just don't know. Like, it's not fair. It's not that fair.
Local media and emergency responders reported that the police had opened fire on demonstrators, especially in towns outside the capital, Nairobi. In addition to the 16 deaths of the 400 wounded people, at least 83 are believed to be in a serious condition. A day after the demonstrations, the brazen government, calling the demonstration an attempted coup, blamed the demonstrators for the chaos and anarchy.
It was terrorism disguised as dissent. There was no peaceful demonstration. It was riots, chaos, and anarchy. Let me therefore state unequivocally that we condemn the criminal anarchists who, in the name of peaceful demonstrations, unleashed a wave of violence, looting, sexual assault, and destruction upon our people. This is nothing to do with protests. This is nothing to do with freedom of expression. It was an unconstitutional attempt to change the regime of this republic. And this is therefore, yesterday what the police did to foil was they were able to foil an attempted coup.
But the rights group Vocal Africa, which was documenting the deaths and helping the affected families, condemned the excessive use of force by the police.
We condemn this excessive use of force. We believe that the police could have handled themselves with restraint. It wasn't necessary to kill so many Kenyans across the country. And this is the problem we find ourselves in. You come out to protest police killings and they kill even more. So we feel there is still a long way to go, and we call for justice for all those who were killed.
President Ruto had assumed office in September 2022 after campaigning for the election as a man of the people. But his pledge at the time to work for Kenya's poor and downtrodden increasingly appears fallacious. Not only have his economic policies dented his image domestically and tarnished his standing abroad, but a country of 52 million people, a third of whom still languish in poverty, is clamoring for his ouster.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.